The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network. This is Vince Russo's The Brand.
AlternaTV.
What is going on, you guys? Welcome to another episode of AlternaTV. I am your host, Brandon Stransky, and it is hotter than a rattlesnake's taint out here in Missouri. Hope your day is going well. Got a few things I'd like to discuss today. Big thing I'd like to talk about today is something I've been wanting to do for a while, but finally got it together. Basically, I want to be discussing the circumstances surrounding the death of one of my favorite musicians, Mr. Kurt Cobain. I personally believe that the official story is not true, and I will explain why using factual and actual evidence that was gathered. First thing I'd like to discuss today is just a couple of quick thoughts on the Kurt angle. Man, I just thought that was just so incredibly lame. It was predictable, and just hearing him say that he's got an illegitimate son, and then just so happens to be a wrestler on the roster happens to be that guy. Wow, what are the odds of that? It just felt totally unbelievable. At least they picked a dude who can actually pass as his son, so I'll give him that for at least doing that, going as far as grab somebody who could believably be Kurt Angle's son. The other thing I've been hearing about is I'm not a fan of the show. I mean, I have people on my Facebook feed who are. That's how I kind of know about it, is Doctor Who. And everybody is up in arms about a female Doctor Who. Well, from what I understand, apparently the Doctor reincarnates in different forms, and who's to say the dice can't land on female? And everybody whining and complaining about it. Seriously, if you're wasting energy bitching about a character on a TV show being female, you have way bigger problems than worrying about that. Now, on the other side of the coin, people are hailing this as a great leap forward, and while I would certainly say it is a step forward, women have been kicking ass in leading roles in the sci-fi genre for decades, so I wouldn't really call it, a great, glass ceiling being shattered. It's just, another progressive step, at most. Anyway, the Cobain death. Personally, I believe that he was not the one who pulled that trigger that ended his life. I have a lot of reasons for doing so. I have my own thoughts of who I think may have been who did it. However, that is not what I am trying to do today. I am simply trying to make the case that what happened was a complete and utter just lack of effort in the case. It was a complete bungle and a joke. They did not take it seriously at all. In fact, it was stated by two of the officers who arrived there that the only reason they were even involved the only reason they were getting involved in this case was because of who it was. They could have honestly cared less. In fact, if it was somebody else, if it wasn't who it was, they probably would have treated it like another overdose, case closed, and move on. But anyway, the big piece of evidence that would point to it being murder was the amount of heroin that he had in his system, which, according to the toxicology reports that were leaked, and was also later confirmed a few years ago by a former detective who was actually one of the investigators on the case, even said that it was actually the biggest overdose in the county. I believe he said it was I forgot it was either the county or the city's history, but one of the two. It was the biggest overdose, highest recorded overdose in that area's history. And the number that was leaked was 1.52 milligrams of heroin per liter of blood. For a regular person like you or me, that would kill us 75 times over. For a severe addict, it would have killed them 3. Cobain certainly fell into the severe addict category. Now, it wouldn't have killed him immediately. It still would have had time to take. It would still needed time to take its effect. But the big thing was, though, even for a severe addict, that was an incredibly large amount. They said it was a triple lethal dose for a severe addict, and for a severe addict, that would have knocked them out within seconds. They would have been on the ground, unconscious, within seconds. Yet the crime scene shows that when they arrived, he shot up in both of his elbows, brought both of his sleeves back down, buttoned up both sleeves, put all of his stuff away, got himself in that position, and still managed to pull the trigger that ended his life. Physically, according to several people who have read it, including Dr. Cyril Wecht, who has been, I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name, he's been one of the guys who's read this information, and he is a very well-respected pathologist, and he has gone on record stating that there is no way, based on that Cobain could have killed himself under those circumstances. The other piece of evidence is their lack of fingerprints on the gun, the note, or the pen used to write the note. Now, they did find a few prints on the gun, but they were illegible, and they basically couldn't be used as any type of evidence. They basically lifted a few prints, but none of them were able to be used because they were basically smudged, smeared, unusable. Now, that begs the question, because there should be 3 sets of prints on that gun, because at least three people had touched it before it was found on Cobain's body. Kurt himself, the person who he bought the gun from, and his best friend, Dylan Carlson, who actually bought the gun because a few weeks prior, Kurt had actually had his guns confiscated off of a call that Courtney had made, his wife Courtney Love made, saying that he locked himself in a room and was suicidal with guns. The cop showed up and he said, "None of that's true. I just wanted to get away from her for a bit." And the cops, said, "Well, as a precaution, we still got to take all these." And he got Dylan to buy the gun, his best friend Dylan to buy the gun for him and not register it in his name, so this one doesn't get confiscated as well. And again, there's no fingerprint, so basically so those prints that should have been there were not, which would seem to indicate that somebody had to wipe them off the gun. See, the other big piece of evidence was the credit card. Kurt Cobain's credit card was not found on his persons. It was missing. The big thing about that is that it is out there. If you go to Google search, Google Images, just look up Cobain credit card. It should bring up the list. It'll show that there were several purchases that were made from 4/2 to 4/8/1994. And the coroner listed his time of death or the date of death as April 5th, 1994. However, there are still purchases going on that date, as well as after that date, including the actual purchases don't stop until the date of his body being found. Crap, now I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. The credit card purchase actually continued after he was declared dead up until his body was found. Who had the credit card? And of course, the discrepancies on the suicide note itself. Now, if you take the top line out and the bottom 4 lines out, it actually, and read it on the context of Kurt Cobain wanting to actually leave the music business and retire and break up the band, it actually makes a lot more sense when you look at it that way. And in those last lines, there's actually a lot, several experts have said, it's very possible that the first line and the last 4 lines were written by a different hand. Somebody else may have added those on there after the fact. And even Dave Grohl has admitted that Nirvana was planning to break up at the time of Kurt's death. They were actually talking about it. They were planning for it. It was in the works. It was going to happen. And Kurt was even talking about and even Michael Stipe has even come out of REM has come out and said that him and Kurt were planning to do some work together. And that's really about it. Those are the big 4 that should at least get it a second look. This kind of evidence should be enough to. Oh, other stuff I totally forgot. I forgot about too. That was that should be cause some alarm. That stuff that was never some leads and evidence that wasn't pursued that should have been, which was very sketchy. Such as when the way they found the position of the shotgun, it was actually the exit chamber of the shotgun was facing the opposite direction of where the shell was expelled from. That's something that should have been looked into, because that doesn't add up. The fact that they even mentioned this is even on the police report as something that was never investigated. All 4 of his car tires were slashed. And then, of course, also just bad bungling by the police. Before they even got, took pictures and recorded the scene, the crime scene, they were already moving stuff around. They're moving his wallet out. So they actually moving his wallet out, setting his ID next to him, take a picture of it. Another thing that the police got wrong, like so wrong, was that they said that Kurt wedged himself in the door with a stool, or wedged himself in by sticking a stool and wedging the door shut with a stool. But when in the crime scene actually shows, the stool was not wedged in there at all. In fact, it was actually a few feet in front of the door. So no wedging, and it was also possible to get in and out of the room. I mean, it wasn't a lock. And it was also a room where you can lock as you're leaving, not you can only lock it from the inside, as the police claimed. That about wraps it up for this week. You can, as always, you can catch me at BSRider67 on Twitter, and I will see you all next week.
This is Vince Russo's The Brand.